I spoke about love last week, and that was an introductory video to what we'll be talking about the next few weeks. And we're sort of in July now. When I'm shooting this, it's still June. And I want to check in because it's been a month since I've been telling you to be positive. And I hope you've been doing kind things. And I want you to actually reflect for a minute and think about how generous this past month has been to you, depending on how kind you've been, if you've been keeping up with this series. I want you to compare it to other months that you've been living life before you heard this and kept getting reminders every week on Monday to be kind and to just be positive. I want you to actually analyze, take a minute, you can pause the video. I want you to analyze correctly, what difference does it make in your life? What difference does it make in the lives of those people that are around you on a daily basis? Was it better? Was it for worse? Did you learn something? Did you actually walk away with good experiences? What parts of it did you expect, and what parts of it were so unexpected when in the giving or the receiving? Because even when you're being positive, when you're being kind, it's a transaction. You're giving and someone else is receiving, and you are receiving something else too, whether it is a harsh response or just a smile or the surprise that somebody could probably have just because they didn't expect it that day. And I want you to think about this because it's been not just a week but a month of me reminding you guys to be positive. We're getting to talk about love. Don't worry about that. I just want to make sure you understand the impact of what you've been doing so that you can continue to do it with more vigor, more energy. Because if you spent the next month not being positive, not being kind, you'd be able to see the contrast of your daily life if you actually assess. And me personally, this is what I do all the time. There is never a time where I go by a week, go by a day, and I don't analyze something about the day or something about the week or something about the month or the year, how it's going so far. That's how you can track progress. If you're just going through life and you're like, oh well, you have to go with the flow, dead fish go with the flow. If you're alive, you're going to be fighting the flow a little bit, and you control the flow. If you're actually alive, you control the flow. You have your own flow. And not to get all whimsical and philosophical about it, but my main point with this is when you start analyzing and reflecting, that's where improvement actually comes in. Improvement is not just in practice. You can practice something plenty of times, but if you've done it wrong, my friend and I spoke about this a long time ago. Craig, if you're listening, shout out to you. He said someone who picked up the violin 1 year ago and learnt the right thing can play better than someone who's been playing the violin for 20 years and learned the wrong thing. So it's never about how much you've practiced. It's also about reflecting and analyzing just how much you are actually progressing. If you're learning the right things, if you're doing the right thing, then at that 20-year mile mark, at that 10-year mile mark, then it's actually a substantial amount that you can actually counteract with. That's when you start thinking about, yeah, maybe I have done something good because I made sure. I was always critical and analytical about what I've been learning, and I've always been even more critical about how this will impact me in the future. You're not just living in the moment, you're also living for your future at the same time. I spoke to a girl about this. I said a lot of girls these days do a lot of degenerate things, and somehow guys are condemned for doing hedonistic things, but it's usually the girls that are way more hedonistic. Club culture, hookup culture, you name it. And I told the girl, I was like, if you were all to be moms tomorrow, would you be proud to tell your child exactly what you've been doing? Would you be able to tell your child proudly? So I know there are still a few girls that would, but would you be able to proudly tell your child, oh yeah, I was twerking in the club on the dance floor and all the guys after that were with me and we hooked up or whatever? Would you be proud of that? Would you be proud to tell your 13-year-old daughter that? Would you be proud to tell your 18-year-old daughter that? Are you even someone that can be modeled after as a woman or a young lady? And she said, you know what, actually now that you mention it, my father was never like that. He's told me so many stories about his childhood, and there was never something that I would stop and think about and say, oh, I think my dad's a bit of a weird character when he was younger. That's how parents are. I'm sure he did some stupid stuff when he was younger. I have. But it's stuff I wouldn't mind telling my sons. It's stuff I wouldn't mind telling my daughters even, because I haven't done anything that bad. I haven't done anything that wrong. So it can't be perceived that way, that's for sure. And yeah, even though you are living and you want good experiences, you want rich experiences that can at least, that your children can look up to you and be proud of you. At least I would say so. Unless you don't want children, then that's another issue we need to deal with. But that's also coming from a place of love, because you love yourself enough to actually want, and you love your future kids enough to at least curate a life for yourself that you can be proud of and that leaves a legacy behind. Love is legacy. Isn't that what Jesus did after his death? He's left a legacy. 12 disciples carried on the work. And now, of course, someone will say, but Judas. I'm not talking about Judas, I'm talking about the disciple that replaced. Of course, Paul never was a disciple of Christ while Christ was alive, but he ended up becoming one of the apostles. And he was one of the most spirit-led people in the fastest pace. I love Paul for the reason that even though he wasn't with Jesus, he was one of the people that picked up much faster than the disciples because of his contradictory life. He picked up a faster pace in comparison to the disciples that did spend time with Jesus and did see how Jesus taught, lived with Jesus, woke up, sat down, ate, slept with Jesus. They were basically on Jesus's routine for days on end. And they didn't absorb as much in 3 years as much as Paul did because he was being led by the Holy Spirit. Think about that. I actually appraise Paul a little bit more. I'm not making him a new god or anything. I'm just saying you need to think about it in a way that makes sense. If you match him up to the other disciples that then became apostles, he had a head start. They had a humongous head start. They saw the Jesus way of things. Paul has to discover the Jesus way of things by being interrupted by Jesus and then learn the Holy Spirit way to the Jesus way to then get to the Father way. That's why he gets sent to the third heaven and he can't talk about it because the Father says they're not even going to understand. What are you going to... You tell them that there's 3 heavens and they'll lose their mind. Most of the church today would say, what? 3 heavens? We only know that there's 1 heaven. There you go. There's so much stuff in the Bible that's been misconstrued that is why Paul had to be so cryptic in his language in the Bible. There's so much stuff even anywhere else in the way he spoke, the things that he chose to share that are cryptic. There are pretty much, I think, enough experiences and instances to fill up another Bible just that Paul had and any of the disciples that were experiences that can't be mentioned in the Bible because it would be like the Book of Enoch, I suppose. I'm not saying I do or don't believe in the Book of Enoch, but I'm saying if you can't handle something like that, then I'm pretty sure you can't handle Holy Spirit things either. I'm pretty sure you won't be able to explain the fact that you control creation, you can bless trees to grow, you can bless trees to bear fruit, kind of like Jesus did, except he cursed trees, but you can... What amazes me is Peter's shadow healed people. Peter's shadow. This is the same guy that denied Christ 3 times. His shadow was just hovering over someone and they got healed. Do you have that much faith? Do you even think faith can go that far? Now I'm staying on the topic of love and I actually want to open up by talking about something because it pertains to something like this. Loyalty. You remember how in the last video I spoke about how the pastor said the 12 disciples were, or the 12 apostles were, more than that actually, but the apostles were so unstoppable because of the love, because of how loved they were. That stuck with me. I was like, they cannot be stopped. They are so backed by God's love that they cannot be stopped. They are so loved by God that they cannot be stopped. I want that love in my life. I want to reach that love. I want that love to pour into my heart every single day. And people complain. See, people who think there's somebody in my life end up complaining because they think they're entitled to a response by me. You know, I was reading something in Matthew just the other day, and it speaks about how you handle discord with brothers or amongst brothers. And if you end up disagreeing because the other person is doing something wrong, you take it up with 2 other people. If they're still at the same position, you go to the church or to the community and you bring up the issue amongst them. And if they still don't change, then you treat them like a pagan. That's Jesus' own words in Matthew. Read the Bible. Sometimes Jesus will treat you harshly. Flee from me, for I never knew you. That is love. Because until you're willing to accept your mistake, there is no love to give. Because you're just going to continue playing games with the love. You're going to take advantage of love. And love is not meant to have or be taken advantage of in that way. I think there's plenty of instances in life where people go through it and they're just like, oh yeah, we're entitled to this response, we're entitled to this, we're entitled to that. And it's like, you're really not, technically. I don't know what makes you think that you are. Just saying. I want you guys to actually think about this for a minute. What makes you think you're entitled to anything? It's all grace anyway, right? That's what people say. It's all God's grace anyway. So what makes you think you're entitled to anything? You don't even understand grace, and then you want to talk about God's love because you don't even accept yourself as a son. Doesn't make much sense now, does it? See how the thought process starts falling apart? You just didn't think that far. A lot of people now are waking up to something that was done half a millennia ago. 5 centuries ago. Martin Luther didn't just be known for the 95 Theses he had after the 95 Theses and after he stood up against the Catholic Church. One of his most famous sermons was about the sonship of Jesus or the sonship of God and how we are a royal priesthood, right? This is a direct quotation of the Bible. We are now made a royal priesthood. That means you are a king and a priest. You have the duties of a king and you have the duties of a priest. You are both hand in hand simultaneously all the time. No matter if you work in a grocery store, no matter if you work maintenance on a guest ranch like me, you have duties of being a king and you have duties of being a priest. I will pray for people at the ranch when they ask me for it. I will do my priestly duties at the ranch for all the staff that's there. I will do my kingly duties and take care of people. I will shower them with love and take care of them. They don't have to worry about anything if they're with me. I do both duties hand in hand because I am a son of God, and that's how sons of God operate. That is how Jesus operated with the 12 disciples. I will be a priest for you and I will be a king for you, because know that I can do both, and I am giving you something to model after and for you to continue perfecting. I'm just showing you the way. You're just supposed to continue to increase and expand and keep going and persisting with that way. So now that we have this, we also have something else in terms of this love. And where I actually wanted to start with this was about a week ago, I was watching a movie that I really wanted to avoid. It's the movie Hachi, a dog's tale or a dog's story. And he's a pretty famous dog for almost a century now. He's been a century. He's been a very famous dog. The most loyal dog. They have a monument made, a statue. And in the beginning of the movie, here's a contradiction for you. So you have Forrest Gump. The opening scene is a feather floating by with the wind. And it's sort of saying this is what Forrest Gump's life is going to be. Just being pushed around by the wind. In the beginning of Hachi's movie, some guy checks the dog, sends him to get shipped out. And somewhere along the way, the paper that's stamped on his crate is lost with the wind. And even though he's well on the way now that he needs to be sent to a train, he falls off at the train station and the crate breaks open, and that's where he meets his owner or his master. That's sometimes how God meets you. That's what I thought about. I had to record a voice note instantly after I watched that scene, because I thought about it and I was like, Holy Spirit, what are you telling me? He's like, that's exactly what was done with you guys. We rewrote all of your stories. We rewrote your stories. All of you watching, we rewrote my story. Because there was something written in a piece of paper, spiritual paper, some contract, some deed, because of the way my actions were, the way I spoke about myself, the way I was as a person, the way my character was, the way my personality used to be. The person I was, my identity was written completely differently because of me. And that paper was something that was defined more on the basis of Satan than it was on the basis of God. So the wind, the Holy Spirit, pushed that paper off, and I got relocated and I got adopted by a master that was just going to love me indefinitely. And in return, he has my undue loyalty. I relate to that story of Hachi because if you want me to introduce love to you correctly, I can only do it through dogs. I've learned a whole lot about love just through dogs. And I'm not sorry about that either. I'm not going to apologize for that. I know some people have mixed feelings about dogs and love, but dogs give you unconditional love. You don't even have to deal with half the BS that people will give you. You know, when you're in a relationship and you start reading into things a little bit too much, it's kind of like that. You don't have to think about if the dog loves you. The dog doesn't have to think about if you love them. Have you ever thought about it? It's just pure, raw, genuine love. Feeding into each other. That's the perichoresis circle I spoke about. You're admired with the dog is admired with you, and you're just so infused with this flame of love that you don't think about doing anything else. You just love spending time with the dog. That's how I understood how love should operate. That is how most couples should operate. I'm not comparing your spouse to a dog. I'm just saying understand the fact that that's how love operates. You're not supposed to read into things too much. If you can love an animal without communication, you shouldn't struggle to love someone with communication, with the ability to communicate with them. Otherwise, you're doing something wrong. Think about that. You can love horses, you can love animals, you can love dogs, you can love cats, you can love all of that without the need of communication. So, somewhere along the way, now you realize where communication is the problem with your relationship with your spouse, your relationship with your family, your relationship with God. Communication is the problem. You don't even know how to communicate effectively. You don't even know, and communication doesn't just mean how you articulate yourself. Communication means how you perceive the articulation of what someone else is saying to you. When you look at that story of Hachi and how after his master dies from a heart attack, and the heartbreaking thing is that's the first time Hachi decides, the very day the master has a heart attack is not that God's going to die, but the very day the master has a heart attack is the first day Hachi ever decides to fetch. And it's not known in the culture of Akitas to play fetch with their owners. They're more of guard dogs, they're more duty dogs than they are play dogs. And that's the same day that happens. It's kind of like when Jesus dies, and now the disciples are left to do their own work. And what does Hachi do? He shows up every single day to the train station and he does his duty, looking out for people. He becomes effective for the entire community there, even though it's heartbreaking. And that story is personally close to me because I lost my dog named Hachi too. He was as good as mine. And the reason I get mad about it is because he was murdered, not even died of natural causes or leopard, murdered by a woman, a mom just trying to protect her kid. But not to bore you with that, it's spending time with my Hachi is what taught me more about love. I didn't need to communicate. If he were sitting down next to me right now, he would lean up his body against me just to say, "Can you please sit down? I want to sit on your lap." And he'd fall asleep on my lap for hours. No communication. He didn't bark. He didn't be needy. Nothing. I learned so much about body language just from spending time with that dog. I learned so much more about loyalty. I learned so much more about how you can defend someone. He treated my heart like it was his own. I treated his heart like it was my own. That's what love is. Isn't that what God did? That's what Jesus did. He took your sins as if they were his own. So he took upon your heart as if it were his own as well. Have you ever thought about that? I was listening to a song today when I was going to go pick up someone from the hospital. You don't need to know the details. And I was listening to this song, and it's in Hindi, but I can give you a translation. It says, "Look at the cross, that's the consequence of love." If you look at the cross and you see Jesus, that is the consequence of love. We've been taught to look at consequences as positive or negative, but oftentimes consequences are not just positive or negative, they are positive and negative. They don't just have to be negative, they can be positive as well. Those consequences redeemed you, didn't they? I'm just saying. I think it says saza, which means consequence or repercussion in a justice manner, or the mannerism of justice and how justice operates. It's the consequence of love. Being willing to take the burdens of others upon yourself. People see me and they think I'm not a man of love. And I'm not there to defend and argue against it because they've got silent treatment or harsh treatment from me. You know what you've done wrong. You know how you've been with me. So yeah, I'm as loving as I can be because I also know another Bible verse, and I'm not here to start playing. I'm not here for a biblical standoff, but something that stuck with me very early on is what Paul writes: if possible, be at peace with everyone. If possible, be at peace. Sometimes that's as far as love can go, and that's quite far. Because he understood he's not loved by a whole lot of people. He understood that he can't love everyone else either. Does it make you think now about love a little bit more? Sometimes when you think about loyalty and love, they both go hand in hand. If you don't have love, you can't be loyal, because that's not loyalty, that's blindness. I spoke about this, false lights. First video on YouTube. Loyalty without love is slavery, even though you think it's your own will. Love without loyalty is not love at all. I'm just going to leave that as it is and leave you to think about why. I heard a pastor talk about how people are so focused on the fruits of the Spirit. Man, people are like, you need to have kindness, hope, patience, peace. Shut up, dork. If you had love in you, all of those things would come as a byproduct of love. You don't have a fruits of the Spirit problem, you have a love problem. It's because you can't love that you can't have faith, hope, joy, peace, patience, kindness, loving kindness, self-control, generosity, humility. It's because you can't love that you don't have those things. Because if you had love, those things come naturally. You're naturally hopeful, you're naturally kind, you're naturally joyful, you're naturally peaceful, you have natural self-control, you're naturally generous. That's an understanding problem that you have. You think it's more about the results, but the results come when you actually start doing the main thing that brings those results. You want to have all of that and you don't want to have love. God is love. So if you're trying to get to the result without love, which means you're trying to get to the result without God, think, use your head. Those are all byproducts of love. Why do you love certain people? Haven't you ever seen it flow naturally from you? Where you become hopeful, you have more self-control, you're joyful, you're peaceful, you have generosity, kindness, and humility in you. It comes naturally, but it's because of love. Love is the gateway to the fruits of the Spirit. Take 1 Corinthians 13 and then take this stuff, the fruits of the Spirit. The tree is love. That's why the fruits are what they bear. You want the fruit, but you don't want the tree, and you don't want the roots either. Love takes time. Don't jump to the fact that you want fruits of love. And sometimes love has a very dark, I didn't even know the video was going to get to this point in time. Love is sometimes very dark. Do you want to know why? Because in this analogy, love is a tree. And if it's supposed to be a tree, there's a point in time where the seed is planted underground. And that's the darkest time of that tree's life, when it's submerged in the soil. But that is, in that darkest time, if you can start growing, and you start growing downward first, depending on how far down you go in the dark with your roots, will increase the amount of how far up you can stand and how long you stand up and stand tall. And then you start bearing fruit. It's a whole process. Don't you understand? That's why love works the way it works. You become friends at some point in time. Then you start seeing if you can go further. So that friendship area is where you plant the seed. And then courtship is where you start let that seed take root if the soil is right. Meaning if you are correct for each other. And then once the roots start taking place, you have a sapling. Once you have that sapling, that's when you get engaged. And then once engagement works well, then you start growing. And then once engagement goes well, you're married. A pastor said dating culture has only created the ease of divorce. So because you know that you can date anybody and dump anybody anytime, anywhere, any place, anybody, you're more likely to divorce. Because you're used to leaving people. You're used to ditching people. You're used to leaving people. So it's easy for you to divorce anyway. You haven't done it the right way. And I was partially in favor of him. I still have to get to that point in time where I can fully accept that. But I partially agree with him. And that's more than enough for me to set me forward to actually pay attention to that and act on it furthermore. But I want you to actually think about that. When you feel like it's dark and dingy and it's just you feel like you're completely compacted in a dark space, let your roots grow downward. Let them spread as far as they can, horizontally and vertically, so that when you start growing upwards, trees grow in two directions, by the way, go upwards and downwards. So if love is supposed to be a tree in your life, the main tree in your life, how far down do you want it to go before you can start growing up and down simultaneously? How strong do you want that root system to be to hold you up and to hold those fruits up, to make sure that it's a mistranslation, by the way, when it says a tree of life bears fruit in its season, every season. It bears fruit every season and it never withers. That is, the tree of life is talking about love too. Imagine if your love was like the tree of life that bears fruit in every season of life and it never withers. The leaves never wither, and the leaves are used for the healing of the nations. Why? Because it's love. I can't talk about love without talking about God and the Bible. So suck it up, fruitcake, because it's not going to get any more different than this. I think that's why genuinely people get very disappointed with love, because they think, oh yeah, it's supposed to be fun times only. Said who? That's when you're young and you don't have half the responsibility of the other person to deal with. But it's in those dark areas oftentimes where love is not just tested, but if you pass the test, you grow so much more in love. In the dark. Isn't that amazing? I love the dark. I wrote plenty about the dark. Makes sense to me. Have you seen loving kindness? Actually paid attention to loving kindness? I'm genuinely asking you a question. Loving kindness is a very deep thing, and it's not what you think it is. Because it's oftentimes in the hardest times of life when you have to deal with loving kindness. That's where grace comes in. Most people don't realize that. I'm going to stop giving excuses and say I'm not God, but I am called to be like God. I'm called to be like Jesus. I'm supposed to be a son of His anyway. But my grace does have limits, just like God's grace does have limits. Everything in life exists with a hard red line that you cannot cross. And that comes back to free will. Sometimes your own choices are what lead you to the grave. And sometimes it's your own choices that lead you to unfavorable circumstances in life. And you can learn to love yourself simply just by making good choices for yourself. You learn to love, because see, if you can't learn to live and love yourself and live with yourself, you're never going to be good enough as company for someone else, and you're never going to like someone else's company. You're never going to love God either, because you're so disgusted with yourself you expect to love God, but God created you in His image. How are you going to love God when He created you in His image when you can't even love yourself? You're forever going to hate that part of God that reflects who you are. If you hate someone else and you say you love God, sorry, but they were created in God's image too. So you don't really love God now, do you? And yes, I absolutely agree. You can love people from a distance. You can love them for who they are, not who they project themselves to be. That's the beauty of it all. You can genuinely love someone, despite the fact that they may be liberal, they may be LGBT, whatever, they may be whatever you don't agree with. You can actually love them, because there is a personality you need to see through all that entire veil. You just need to have, you know why Jesus' eyes are described as having fire or flames? Is because it burns through with love and sees you for who you really are. And you need to see people that way. I pray for eyes of fire like that, so I can burn through the layers that people have and see them for who they are, the way God created them, so I can learn to appreciate them and love them more. I get along with some people that a lot of people would disagree with, and the only reason I do is because I see the potential of their true identity. It all comes back to who you really are. And if you really love yourself, and if you just genuinely love, you will be who you're supposed to be, or who you're meant to be. Think about it. Like I said, we're not going to touch up on love incredibly in just one video, because that would be like an 8-hour podcast and we'd still be barely touching the surface. I'm just trying to open up your mind to think about ways in which you can love. I want you to match up your personality on the basis of how well you know you can love, how well you've already known that you can love. Like right now, I'll give you a bit of a rundown today. There is a girl that I know on the ranch. She's a wrangler. I haven't spoken to her much, but it's her birthday tomorrow. And one of the girls mentioned that it was her birthday and that they wanted to do something for her. So I said, I got all the bills covered. Don't worry about it. It's all on me. Just tell me what you need me to get. So I picked up the other wrangler from urgent care, and then I ordered a cake ahead of time. So I picked up the cake, picked up some other stuff, came back, and then I picked up donuts for all the wranglers for today. And the girl I picked up from urgent care, she said, "You're actually pretty crazy. I wouldn't spend this much money on people like this." I was like, now think for a minute. If I can love strangers this much, how much would I love someone I'm familiar with? If I can do this much for someone that's a stranger to me, how much would I do for someone that's really close to me? Imagine how many things Jesus did to strangers he met on the way. How much would he be willing to do for his disciples? How much would he be willing to do for his sons and daughters? That's you. He's willing to do a whole lot for you. Open your arms to receive. Understand how to love yourself by first opening up how to see yourself in God's view. Ask God, even if you're not religious, please ask God today, how do you see me? I want to receive your love. Please show me how you love me. And model that, refine that. Continue to practice that with yourself. And once you keep filling yourself with love, let that overflow in you to other people. Let it become contagious. And someday you'll just end up happy like me. Continue to be happy, to be loving, continue to be kind, continue to just be positive. And assess now. For this next month, I want you to assess. You've got this. I trust in you. I have faith in you. I'm happy today because it started raining. It's finally cold and it's raining and it's windy. The storm's coming in. I'm happy. I love the storm. And I love the storm because it's the dark. And I get to love in darker times when everybody else runs away. I get to grow in love when everybody decides to run away. That's why you have to love the darkness sometimes and love the storm. I hope you guys have a great week ahead. Genuinely. I'll see you guys next week.